action. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billie, and I'm your host. This is a weekly program about vintage knitting, and I will show you my knitting in a little while. I don't have any guests today, which I often do, but I have some other news I want to share with you and a few other things to report. So, as they say, let's get started. First of all, I wanted to announce the winner of the treasure hunt. Her name, she goes by Wallace Clement on Ravelry. And you might recall there were 4 Tamara de Lempicka paintings. This was one. This was another. This was a third. And this was the 4th. The prize for finding the episodes and the timestamps that all 4 of these paintings were featured in previous episodes of Show and Tell was a pattern from Ravelry valued at up to $10. And Dawn, who happens to be part of the Susan Crawford Jeannie knit along, chose as her prize another Susan Crawford pattern called Diamonds Are Forever. So congratulations, Dawn. I hope you're going to enjoy finishing Jeannie first and then moving on to your next Susan Crawford. While we're on the topic of Dawn, I wanted to share with you this beautiful card that she sent me. A few episodes ago, I announced that it was the 1-year anniversary of Show and Tell, and she sent me a congratulatory note. Dear Billie, happy anniversary, Show and Tell. Congratulations, Billie, on the first anniversary of Show and Tell knitting. I saw the reminder for your upcoming anniversary premiere appear on my computer this morning, and I thought I would put this little card in the post to you to mark this great milestone in your Show and Tell journey. I watched the very first episode of Show and Tell a year ago and can't quite believe an entire year has gone by already. I got to tell you, this brought a tear to my eye. I had no idea. I'm so glad I joined the Jeannie Cow. It is a lovely way to meet new friends across the world, friends that I would otherwise not have met, especially during the many months of lockdown that we've endured. Thank you for hosting the Cow and previous Cows, which have been equally enjoyable to watch as a spectator on my part. Sending you many congratulations, Billie, and here's to a very, very, very successful year ahead for Show and Tell and for you. Meanwhile, in a small abode somewhere in England, someone is frantically knitting. Best wishes, God bless. Thank you so much. It's really, really sweet. And I don't expect other people to send me cards, but I do love to read your comments. So I hope that you'll take a moment to say something, anything. Tell me about what you're working on. Tell me about artwork that you love. Tell me if you're knitting something by Susan Crawford. Anything you want to share, just put it in the comments. It would be nice to get to know you and correspond with you a little bit too. Now I've changed my location this week because I have a special announcement to make. As you know, I live in a small apartment and often I'm asked how I go about storing my stuff. Well, today I'm going to show you. I'm going to open this and share with you actually. By the way, this container was purchased at Container Store and I'll show you the inside of it, the inside lip. There's a sort of a foamy rubber thing in here. And when you snap this on, it really seals it airtight so that hopefully no critters can ever get inside. Okay, so I have sequins. I once knit a sweater with sequins. I have some of the yarns left over from my Mary Maxim and from the navy blue sleeveless sweater I made this summer. Those are recent knits. I have 2 cones from my, well, partial cones, because I was using 3 cones, 3 cones to knit off of when I made the chevron cardigan. That was my first knit along. This is not even stash. This is a project, a sweater, a vintage sweater that's not yet complete, but for safekeeping, I keep it in that sealed container. These are, oh yeah, this was an accident. I overbought early in the pandemic yarn to finish a scarf that I had started for my son. I ended up making him a balaclava and matching mittens. I used double strand and I really didn't know how to order, and I was afraid because this was the exact same dye lot as what I'd started with. I felt I was really lucky to get it, so I really over ordered just so I would make sure to not run out, because I knew I could never get that dye lot again. What are the chances? I first got the yarn from a friend of mine who had purchased it, I believe, on a trip to Thailand, and this yarn came from Germany. Same dye lot. I have a baby sweater that I wasn't able to ship to France early on in the pandemic when my cousin's grandbaby was born. White cotton yarn, leftovers from a sweater that I made a couple years ago. And you know, it goes on. Here's some red yarn left over from my red sweater that has the navy birds going around. But it's really not so much, you know. There's some gray yarn from a gray sweater, all leftovers. Notice there's no sweaters quantities in here. I'm not stockpiling to make future projects. Everything that's in here is pretty much left over from something else that I have made. These go way back. This is from the 1980s. I still have and wear the sweater. This is from my As If tee. I had some leftover pink yarn and some other assorted odds and ends. I don't know. Oh, from back in the day when I knit with Angora. I still have some of this fluffy, funny stuff. And there's some turquoise. I don't know if you can see the halo. It's real fluffy, gorgeous stuff. I also have in here some old magazines. Annie Black, French magazine Model. And then, oh, these are a real trip down memory lane. Computers were just coming into being in the early 80s, and my local yarn shop had purchased this computer where you gave it your measurements. This is 1981, and it would crank out, cast on 83 stitches on a small needle, rib, knit one, purl one, blah, blah, blah. So it sort of cooked up instructions for you. And the yarn shop had me fill out a little form with my gauge, 4.5, and my row gauge was 6, my chest measurement 39. Yay, hasn't changed too much. Shoulder measurement 15, length to underarms 11. Thank you very much. I wanted a V-neck in the front and in the back, and it cranked out instructions to do that. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I kept. Anyway, there are things like that in this box. Oh, old mohair. Nothing like the mohair today. I'm actually glad that I still have a small amount of this left. This stuff was scratchy, and you can see it has a different kind of a sheen than mohair today. I made a sweater of this. That's what the sequins were from. I made a white sweater. I no longer have it, or I'd show it to you. And in the section, it was solid sequins. And the sequins are sort of like a mermaid blue, like an aqua color. These are little yellow flowers. Oh my goodness. This goes back to, I think when I was in college, I crocheted one thing only in my life, and it was a huge Afghan. I've shown it in another episode. The Afghan called for having these yellow flowers on it, but when I finished the ivory colored Afghan, maybe I have a little bit of the yarn here somewhere, I don't know. I liked it so well, I didn't want to mess it up by putting these flowers all over it. And we still use the Afghan. Oh, I have other baby sweaters that I knit but never used. They're in here. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah. I had knit a sweater. Maybe I wore it one time. I don't know. Using this red fabric ribbon. I still have an unused pack of it. It's from Knitting Fever. It's called Ragtime, and it says cotton, 50 yards, size 13 needles. I might have that sweater somewhere, and maybe I would unravel it and repurpose it. My son was at a garage sale, and I used some in the sweater that I test knit for Corrado Lark. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'll put it on the screen. Here's an unfinished sweater living in here from the 1980s that I was making with all kinds of leftover stuff. And pretty much that's it. I mean, there are a few other little odds and ends that wouldn't be so interesting, but to be frank, some of this stuff I haven't looked at in years. But now that I see what I've got, I think it might be time to turn some of it back into cash. Now, this is a skill that I have quite a bit of experience with. When my mother passed away, she had a small house filled with a lifetime's worth of things. And I developed a procedure for downsizing her house so that I could put it on the market and sell it. The first thing I did was skim off the things I thought I could sell on eBay. So a lapis lazuli Dunhill lighter, and a menu from Forum of the 12 Caesars in New York, an ashtray from El Morocco. And I've chronicled in this book that I wrote about my mother, how I went about selecting other things. I got to be pretty good at listing and selling things on eBay. So much so that I offered my services to others to help them downsize and declutter their New York apartments. So I had the idea of bringing together yarn sellers and yarn buyers online, but in real time, in person. And that's what I wanted to tell you about today, because I'm very excited about it. I ran my idea past some other people, and the feedback that I've been getting is pretty positive. So let me give you a couple of examples. Tracy wrote to me, "I'm a yarn addict. Whatever your idea is, I'm on board." And Kati said, "Sometimes I try to trade or exchange my stash with other local crafters, but it's hard because there isn't a central point to join people with this interest. Your initiative has everything to work. Well, I hope these people are right. And I really hope that you'll think it's a good idea too, and that you'll join me. I'm calling the program Show and Tell and Sell. And I'll be doing an info session to answer all your questions and to explain how the program's going to work on Friday evening, September 10th, 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern time. I've already started putting out feelers and I have gotten some people signed up already, but as the saying goes, the more the merrier. So if this sounds interesting to you, I hope that you'll put that on your calendar, go to the link that I'm about to give you and register for the info session. The selling sessions will start a week after, but you'll hear from me before then. So the program will be designed to bring together people who want to sell yarn with other people who are interested in buying yarn. Now, on the buy side, you might need a particular yarn in a particular colorway, and maybe it's discontinued and one of these stashers might just have it. Or you might be getting ready to do your next project and you want to help someone out who's overburdened by taking some of their excess stash off their hands. You think that you would like to downsize your collection for whatever the reason. Maybe you want to recapture some of that money that's tied up. Or maybe you just simply don't have the space. Whatever your reason, if you are in that camp, I am here for you. So I invite you to just think about this. And if it's something that interests you, I want to invite you to an information session that I will be holding on Zoom Friday evening, as I said, September 10th, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So that means if you're in New Zealand or Australia or Europe or other parts of the world, this session is probably not going to work for you. But if the program, I shouldn't say if, because I believe this is a really great program. When the program takes off and really is up and running, I promise people in other parts of the world that I will do this at other times of the day to accommodate you. So if you want to turn your stash into cash, go to this website prior to September 10th, bit.ly/3BKPN70. Again, that's bit.ly/3 uppercase B, lowercase k, uppercase P, uppercase N, 7, lowercase o. You can also find that website given in a thread on the Ravelry group, Show and Tell, and also on Instagram at billietoy, BILLIETOY. You'll see this exact little poster there. And to the right, the link will be printed there. It's not a hot link, but you can just copy and paste it into your browser. The more you spread the word, the better the variety will be for all the shoppers out there. This week's quote comes from a man named Emile Jacques Ruhlmann, who died in 1933. He was probably France's most famous furniture designer and interior decorator, one of the most important figures in the Art Deco movement, and his furniture was on display in the famous 1925 Paris exposition from which Art Deco took its name. This guy knew something about hand-making objects, beautiful objects. And here's his quote: "I work on the principle that nothing that can be done by machine should be done by hand. Handmade should look handmade. With that, he was super, super successful for exotic woods and ivory inlay. And if you want to read more about him, there's a big article on Wikipedia. His work is simply magnificent, and I've had the pleasure of seeing some of it in museums. In fact, my favorite museum in the world, as you probably know, if you've been watching me for a while, the Metropolitan Museum of Art here in Manhattan, had an exhibit just on Ruhlmann, I don't know how many years ago, a good 10, maybe 15 years ago. As I've promised, each week I will show you another pearl item as part of the Pearls of Wisdom segment. So these are biwa pearls. There are 5 graduated strands, and this is a blood coral set in a 14-karat gold clasp. My mother had this clasp made. Her brother brought these pearls back from the Orient for her years ago when we called it the Orient. And they are worn like this. Trying to get these smooth. The fashion was really to wear them with the clasp on the side so that it was visible. I suppose one could wear it on the back of the neck, but this is really how they're meant to be worn. It's a little sticky in New York today, so they're not hanging exactly smoothly, but you can see that they're graduated, and it's a real knack to get these to be exactly the right length so that one doesn't hang over the other. Okay, so that's our little pearl session for today. And I think that about wraps it up. Oh, no, I totally forgot. I wanted to show you my knitting. 1 second. Okay, so I'm not sure how many weeks in this is. I think we started on July 15th. So this is about 6 weeks worth of knitting. A good 4 inches of ribbing there. And then each of these bands we figured out takes about a week. This is what I'm knitting with the Knit Along group. And you can see a couple of episodes where some of us have come together to talk about it. It's the Jeannie pattern by Susan Crawford, and there are 46 stitches per 4 inches on a size 1 US needle or 2.25 millimeters. So it's slow going. Recently, I decided to slip some of the stitches onto another size 1 needle, another small circular needle that I have. Let me grab it. I had this in my collection of needles from back in the 80s when I first was knitting seriously. I think I must have used this for necklines, but anyway, I slipped some of the stitches onto this so that I would have the full circumference, not bunched up, but big enough so that I could actually slip this on over my head without dropping the stitches. So of course, I did drop stitches, and picking these little tiny stitches up before they create a runner is no easy feat, but nevertheless, I wanted to try it on before I went further to make sure that it's a good fit, and it looks okay. I'm not so happy with this, I varied from the pattern because I wanted this to be a little smaller, and then I wanted more width in here. I thought this would be more like at the waist or below. Well, so I did want to make sure that it was fitting before I went on, and it seemed to be pretty reasonable fit. So there it is, Fair Isle on Teensy Needle. And I'm really happy with my colors. I'm really happy with how it looks. It's sleeveless, and tune in a couple of weeks because we'll do another group session with the other people who are also knitting it in the knit along. Okay, that's it for this week. Bidding you farewell. I hope to see some of you, the stash people, on September 10th, and the rest of you maybe September 17th in the evening if you're in the United States, to do some yarn shopping that will help your fellow knitters. Take care, everyone.